Friday, the 27th of October, 2023 at Protestia Studios, and this is your intelligence briefing coming to you from Protestia.com, where you can go to get all the latest in Christian polemics and discernment news. This program is brought to you, as always, by our intrepid patron supporters who, for only $5.95 a month, join us on a financial level, and you can join them as well by going over to patreon.com/Protestia and subscribing. For that, you will get ad-free browsing, the full version of Protestia tonight, and be referred to as the intrepid patron supporters every time we do this program. We very much appreciate them, and this is brought to you by their faithful support. Let's get right into it. Over at Protestia.com, headline: SBC lawyers file brief asking Supreme Court to side against a confirmed sex abuse victim, but do they have a point? This is in Kentucky. Samantha Killery is up against the Southern Baptist Convention. Article reads, lawyers representing the SBC have filed an amicus brief encouraging the Supreme Court of Kentucky to rule against a verified sex abuse victim, understanding that a ruling in her favor would negatively impact them. Several years ago, Samantha Killery claimed that her father, a police officer who adopted her when she was 2, sexually abused her throughout her childhood until she turned 18 in 2009. She recorded him admitting it, turned in the tapes, resulting in a guilty plea and 15 years behind bars. She later sued her father's girlfriend, whom he dated from 2001 to 2003, and her grandfather. Like her father, they were also police officers. She alleges they both knew of the abuse but failed to report it. She sued the police station as well for employing all three. A judge initially dismissed the case against her, saying that the statute of limitations of 5 years had passed, but then the state legislature of Tennessee, I guess they changed things. The state legislature of Tennessee changed the statute of limitations to 10 years back in 2017, and then 4 years later made it so that claims against, quote, non-perpetrators could be brought forward against law enforcement and religious organizations if they knew about the abuse but failed to lawfully report it. And that apparently is the case here. The Court of Appeals in Tennessee has reopened Killery's case. The state Supreme Court of Tennessee is weighing whether or not the legislature's expansion of the statute of limitations can be applied retroactively, enabling her to bring another suit against her father's girlfriend from 20 years ago, her grandfather, and the police station responsible for employing them all. Lawyers for the SBC, Lifeway, the Executive Committee, and Southern Baptist Theological Seminary filed an amicus brief encouraging the Supreme Court to throw out Killery's lawsuit and not revive tort claims against non-perpetrator parties. This is basically amounts to, in the wake of Me Too and the new knowledge that everybody has with regard to sex abuse claims and cases, changing the law retroactively, and the SBC is concerned. The SBC is concerned about this becoming the new legal standard of abuse victims, whether true or not, being able to sue for things that supposedly happened many years ago but weren't brought up then. One of them specifically being the case of Hannah Kate Williams, who very recently, we talked about having tweeted out that the SBC is about to file bankruptcy and everything's going down and this and that. And I have it on good authority that that's not the case. I had predicted at the time that, I didn't buy what she was saying. And now it seems like those suspicions will wind up being correct. The article goes on to read that Hannah Kate Williams is currently involved in a similar lawsuit against the SBC. She has a troubled history, contends that her father sexually, physically, and psychologically abused her from her teens to childhood, claims she reported the abuse at the age of 8 to SBC church staff and later to others, but they did nothing other than tell her, "I'm praying for you." Unlike Killery, Hannah Kate Williams' allegations have not been proven or substantiated. And I don't know if the amicus brief that the SBC filed references that case or not. The SBC says that victims of child abuse should certainly get justice, but insists that retroactively applying expired timelines against those who had no part in the abuse is not the way to do it. I tend to agree, actually. Notwithstanding the fact that it violates due process claims, also true. Now, our article reads here, the SBC's motivations are clear. They don't believe that the new 2021 law against non-perpetrator parties should be allowed to proceed. If the Supreme Court agrees, Hannah Kate Williams' lawsuit against them would be dead in the water and dismissed. But if the court agrees that these parties can be charged, it would open them up to far greater liability and directly impact other cases they're involved in. So I will let you be the judge. You can head over to protestia.com. This article was published yesterday at Protestia, and you can read more about it then, including some links to other background information, which we pretty much always do in every article, and allowing you to dig a little bit deeper and confirm what we're saying factually and call us out if we got it wrong. Next headline at protestia.com, church decorated with drag pumpkins preaches against Israeli occupiers. Yes, this is a real headline. Reverend Latifah Griffin is the impastor of the Unitarian Universalist congregations, the pagan denomination where men like John Pavlovitz, the pro-LGBTQ, pro-choice writer for Relevant magazine, finds safety and succor. Griffin is the church's first openly queer woman and first woman of color in a pastoral role, overseeing a, quote, and inclusive congregation of people of various faiths, backgrounds, gender identities, and sexual orientations, so on and so forth. This is looks like a Facebook post from the First Unitarian Universalist congregation of the Palm Beaches, where they have pumpkins decorated in drag. Bob Ross, in our Sunday service, supposedly, thank you to the LGBTQ plus youth teen parent support group from Compass for gracing our dais with these fun drag pumpkins. Yes, this is what is going on in a supposed church. Obviously, we would argue this is not a church. There is a link to a letter here from this, quote-unquote Christian denomination from the President Sophia Bettencourt responding to the attacks on Israel by Hamas, saying things like how to reconcile the cost of occupation and war, how to nuance two very real histories of oppression and violence, basically drawing moral equivalence between what Hamas did apparently and what they supposedly think Israel is doing. Hat tip to the dissenter for bringing this to our attention. Next headline at Protestia, James MacDonald, the disgraced former pastor of Harvest in the Chicago area, claims he beat up a 59-year-old woman because he had PTSD from being blogged about by Julie Roys. Seriously. Judges ruled that the disgraced former Harvest Church pastor James MacDonald, who was arrested 7 months ago and charged with felony battery and assault after attacking a 59-year-old woman in a road rage incident that put her in the hospital for 21 days, is eligible for mental health diversion. A mental health diversion is a program in California where residents suffering from mental health disorders and facing criminal charges may complete treatment to avoid jail time. I guess he's eligible for this, according to this court. He's facing 7 years in prison for the assault. Earlier claimed that the woman was the aggressor, but also that he blacked out and doesn't remember much. During his hearing, MacDonald's attorney highlighted the testimony of two doctors who said he was diagnosed with PTSD in 2020 and 2023, that he suffered from resulting from being written about and trolled by Julie Roys of the Roys Report, which then caused him to attack the other motorists in self-defense. I'm not sure how the two things are related. Julie Roys, as you know, has given us quite a hard time over the last few years. Now, granted, it wasn't anywhere close to what was going on with James MacDonald and all of that, but I certainly wouldn't try to claim any sort of PTSD or something like that as a result. His lawyer explained the anger manifestations that Pastor MacDonald showed on that particular day. The anxiousness, the anxiety, pits of anger are all consistent with the diagnosis of PTSD, as well as supported by a previous diagnosis. He was a 63-year-old man, has no record, no criminal history. He's had no instance of violence, nor instance of any type of criminal history, no substance abuse, no domestic violence, nothing. You can read the rest of this quote over at Protestia. But it's interesting. I guess this has some legs legally. I'm not sure. In his defense on this road rage incident, I'm not buying it, of course. But I'd have to say I don't know all the details. Prosecutors who are prosecuting James MacDonald pointed out that he attended treatment several times in the past. The treatments were unsuccessful, making him an exceedingly poor candidate for a diversion program. Ultimately, the judge was satisfied that MacDonald is eligible, set a court date for February 28th, 2024 to determine whether or not it is the best course of action. So this is not going to actually be, it looks like, decided on for 4 months or so. So we have more details here, including elder qualifications that, of course, MacDonald has failed to live up to. We kind of knew that before, and other recent appearances that he has made. You can read more at protestia.com. Next headline: GOP House Speaker Mike Johnson was ERLC trustee, helped kill an anti-abortion bill in Louisiana, because, of course. He did. While many are lauding the appointment of Southern Baptist Congressman Mike Johnson as the newly elected Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, noted activist group Abolition Rising has revealed that well-produced content that's been in the works for months exposing what Johnson did to keep abortion legal in Louisiana, which is just that, the ERLC was very much in this camp as well. The pro-life movement is... obviously, and we've consistently exposed, not using equal weights and measures when it comes to justice, and basically wants to prosecute doctors, but to kind of be hands-off with the women that make the decisions to kill their own children. We, of course, disagree with that and find that biblically offensive, and again, a biased and hypocritical, and not applying the biblical standard of equal weights and measures. Apparently, the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, was part of that, part of the pro-life movement, part of the ERLC's position on this, and the pro-life industry's position on all of this. You can read more about this at Protestia, including a link to the ERLC open letter opposing this bill in Louisiana, which apparently Mike Johnson was right on board with. So, yeah, we're praying that he repents, of course, of that position and comes to a more biblically faithful and consistent position on the issue of abortion. Last headline at Protestia: Jude 3 Project says black churches need to exist because of white Christian terrorism. This from a curated post from Enemies Within the Church News. The Christian media outlet Jude 3 Project has released a video on September 20th blaming the existence and continued existence of black churches on white Christian terrorism. The speaker, Dr. Willie Francois, then went on to say that the same bigotry that existed in the past in America is what's keeping the black church separated from other ethnicities. Let's head over to the original article here real quick. This over at Enemies Within the Church News. Jordan Smith writes, and he has this quote here of this gentleman, Willie Francois, saying, because the only reason why we have black churches are because white people want to put us in the balcony. They didn't want us to serve communion. They didn't want us to baptize. They didn't want to baptize us in the same baptismal fount as their children, right? Black churches exist as a response to white Christian terrorism. Okay. You can read more about this over at Protestia. There's a link at the bottom of our article going over to the original article at Enemies Within the Church News. Thank you so much for joining me for this edition of the Intelligence Briefing for Friday, the 27th of October, 2023. Head over to protestia.com for all the latest in Christian polemics and discernment news. We will see you again next time. Have a good weekend. Go to church on Sunday and worship with the saints. And if you're in Colorado, maybe I'll see you there. As always, Semper Reformanda.